I'm going to make this video on very costly and deadly mistakes that you can make and how to avoid them, and finish off with a couple of things that you should also know before you go and set up. A big one is heavy cable to your inverter and your fridge. Now, a lot of decent inverters have the cables on them. Use the cables provided and hook them straight to the battery. With your fridge, basically don't have it any more than 10 meters from your batteries. And you can tell this by measuring the cables or where the cables are going to go. Don't skimp out on the cables for your inverter and your fridge. Don't just go by the cheap stuff. Get the big, heavy bars. Go and get stuff that's as thick as your finger if you want, but make sure it's good, it's solid, it's heavy. Otherwise, you'll end up going through a whole lot of grief that I went through when I set up my fridge. Also, you've got to know how to solder properly. Now, I've got how to solder properly in a video. If you're good at plumbing soldering, forget it. You don't use plumbing style soldering. You don't use that style flux with electronics. If you don't know how to solder properly, don't go ahead and do it and burn out a box and blow it up anyway, just by holding down soldering iron on for 15 seconds. Just use automotive crimps, the same little eyelets where you strip back the wire and crimp your little connectors on. Use that instead. Don't kid yourself and say she'll be right, because you won't be saying she'll be right after you blew up a box that cost you several $100s. The other one is your polarity. You must know your positives and your negatives. If you get those wrong, most of your Chinese inverters, you'll blow them up. I done it myself. I managed to bullshit them into saying there was something wrong with it, and they returned it and swapped it over for another one, which I then used until I found out that the crap Chinese one doesn't handle hot days very well. If you get a cigarette lighter plug one, it's positive for the little pin in the center, and your outer ring, your outer pipe, that is negative. But you've got to get that right. There's some very high-end models that have got giant power diodes. There's a couple of models that have got fuses, but most of them just blow up because most of them are made in China. And they also assume that you're going to know your positive from your negative, and you only got to ever hook it up once, or at least until you have your batteries die and got to buy new batteries. So you're not going to make the mistake. But if you do, it blows the entire thing up in most cases. All depends on how good a quality one you've bought. Now, badly set up chimney fireplaces, that can really screw you over, because if you just have a hot pipe going up through a roof space and you've gone, oh, we'll insulate the roof space with straw, you're liable to cause a bloody fire. You've got to know that it needs to go up properly. Now, mine isn't set up properly, but I asked the advice of some person from a very high-ranking shop who I believe to be qualified, and they told me a load of BS, and I questioned it, and they still told me it was fine, and then I installed it wrong. I've got no wood anywhere near where it is, like it's in between the trusses. It's all very spaced out. It goes through heat-proof rubber at the top. But you should try and get your double or your triple insulated rig to go up through your roof space. Or, something which for a fact and is bona fide is not going to catch on to anything in the roof. Otherwise, you burn your roof down. It is also advisable every year, I've got a little panel I take off in the autumn, to look up there for birds' nests and mice nests before you start it every year for the first time, whenever you're intending that the nights are getting a bit cold and you may need to use it. And clear out any muck around there. Because, that's one of your most likely things of causing a fire, is to have a bird's nest or a mouse nest against your chimney. But you've got to get that worked out properly, and know that it's done right. Otherwise, you'll cause the roof to catch on fire and it may burn you alive. And that is not unknown. In actual fact, I've had relatives who did burn to death in a house fire back in the 1800s. They used candles, kerosene lamps, who knows what, but they, yeah, several kids died in that. Anyways, next one is gas heaters. Now, when they say these products are outdoors, they bloody well mean it. It's not just some government bureaucrat forcing them to write this stuff. You'll get carbon monoxide poisoning if you don't. There have been people that have died of it. You know, there's ads on TV here about it. People talking who, you know, some of them lost their twin sons. There's someone I've come across on YouTube who their friend had their gas heater set up in an RV and killed themselves from carbon monoxide poisoning. I think it may have been a couple who died there. You know, these things, they have outdoor use only for a bloody reason. And that's because the carbon monoxide poisoning will get you. Now, some of them will be all right. Some of them are designed for indoor use. I think the Mr. Buddy heaters are fine. But having said that, buy yourself a carbon monoxide detector anyway. Now, by gas heaters, I mean propane heaters. I've got a catalytic common black cat behind me here. That's sort of all right to use inside, but I leave the doors open when I'm using it, and I don't run it for very long anyway. But, you know, you want to be careful of these things. Catalytic ones are better, but they're still not bulletproof. Well, I'm not going to risk telling you they are and then having you die. So I'm going to say that they're not bulletproof because, you know, better safe than sorry. So, yeah, that's one big thing you should take into account. And if it's got a thing to set up a flue, don't say she'll be right. Set the flue up on the damn thing to get the fumes out. But even if you have a propane heater, you do want to have a carbon monoxide detector as well, even if it's running fine, because if it gets a heap of dust or a heap of crap in it or a bit of something which turns into charcoal, it can screw up what's, you know, it can just start making carbon monoxide from burning incorrectly. And when these things burn incorrectly, they also make carbon monoxide, even the ones that are so-called safe. So get a carbon monoxide detector. I also recommend smoke detectors, which I have here as well, in case something goes wrong with the wood heater, and a fire extinguisher, which I will show at another time. Now, another thing, these aren't the so... Oh, yes, pipe friction. This one can be a pain in the butt. I'll cover this and then I'll go on to the ones that aren't completely deadly and costly. This one, you wouldn't believe it if you didn't know it. When you've got a half-inch pipe, or any pipe, the sides of this pipe are not moving, they're still. And then you try and get water to flow through that half-inch pipe. And the water is running against solid sides that are not moving. And you know what happens? Because the sides are still, the water, with a long enough distance, which can be 50 metres or so, will start to slow up. And your water flow will be fantastic at your overhead tank, and then crap at the end of your pipe. And you might think you've got a blockage on the pipe, or you may assume that there's something wrong with your overhead water tank, or you may swear that the whole idea of putting a water tank overhead doesn't do a damn thing. It does work. But what it is it's the water being slowed down because the pipe sides are solid, they're not moving, they're still. It gets friction and then it slows the water down. They call it pipe friction. You wouldn't believe it until you've experienced it firsthand, which I have when I set up a hose for watering my trees. It was coming fine out of the little IBC that I had stacked on this old diesel tank, and then you turn it on and it's just slow as. But it was because I had it going through about 90 metres of garden hose. The pipe friction just slowed it down ridiculously. Use 1-inch hose, better still 1 1/4 inch hose. You know, and you can go ahead and get 1 1/2 inch. It's probably overkill getting 2-inch. But, you know, run that from your overhead tank or wherever your tank is right up to where your house is, and only when you go into your house you know, and it's going to be less than, you know, 30 metres or 50 metres or something like that, should you go to 1/2 inch. I basically only have it go back to 1/2 inch right before it goes to the tap. I have the inch to 1/2 inch connector. So that's another one that can cost you a lot of money on 1/2 inch hose, only to find out that the damn stuff is not going to give you any flow. And I never saw that coming until my father told me later that he knew all about it. The other thing, the less deadly things I want to talk about, is setting up things intelligently. That is, you know, solar-related things for the summer and non-solar dependent things in the winter when you've got snow all over the place. You know, things like that. Work out the system that you need, the season you're going to need your fridge most, like the summer. Have it dependent on something that's abundant in the summer, like sunlight. Have your wood heater so that it will go fine without sun, because there's not enough sun in the winter. I've made another video on that already called Setting Things Up Intelligently. The other one is whatever the salesman tells you about evaporative air conditioners, the back of them needs to suck dry, non-humid, hot air from the outside of the building in, blow it across you, and push it back out. They don't really have proper fittings or proper mounts, but where it sucks the air in, it's got to be sucking it from the outside of the building. Now, whether you put it up against a door or do as I've done, which is make a plywood frame on feet that goes from a vent in the door right to and hard up against the back of the evaporative air conditioner, evaporative cooler, and then have another place where it can blow the air out. You can't just sit these inside and turn them on. You also, it's because it can't reuse the same air it's used previously. And, you know, it's supposed to have a flow effect that goes from one side to the other. You'll read this in the manual of some of the ones, but this stupid salesman just wants to sell it to you regardless. And he'll tell you whatever, until he just gets the money and gets you out of the shop. So keep that one in mind. The other one is not having enough firewood and water. While you got a chance, get as much firewood as you can. You can use dead wood that's been made wet, and that will burn, but you need to have it. You can't just rely on that. You can only use that for, you know, 1/3, maybe nearly 1/2 of your wood usage, because your existing fire is trying to dry it out, and it's got to dry it out before it can burn it. But you can't throw green stuff in there, although one of my bosses could burn green wood. He was very good with fires. He was only burning grapevine canes. But, you know, get your wood stacked up. I used to use about 10 gallons of water for washing my hands and cooking every week. And, you know, with your showers, it'll tell you how much that uses per minute, and then get the amount of minutes you have your average shower 4 times that by 7 days a week, and you've got a weekly usage of your water. But your washing machine will just go astronomical water usage. You will never see the water usage of your washing machine coming. You will be shocked at how much water washing machines go through. So keep that one in mind. It's just about incalculatable, the amount of water the damn washing machines will go through. Yeah, you can calculate it, but by hell, you'll be flabbergasted, and you may not believe what you're reading on the paper. Another one is not having enough insulation. You want to go for your soaking insulation, which is a silver paper, and some other form of insulation. I don't care if it's loose fill, I don't care if it's fiberglass batsa, I don't care if it's vermiculite. You want insulation because it'll help you keep warm in the winter and avoid you getting too hot in the summer, and it'll be a longer time. You know, it'll be able to get hotter outside before you need to turn on your fan or your evaporative air cooler inside. You know, and that may be electricity better used for something else, such as your fridge. So yeah.